The sun beat down on the polished concrete of Whitmore Aviation Academy as families and dignitaries filled the stands. Banners flapped in the wind, cameras scanned the crowd, and cadets stood in crisp rows, their uniforms perfect, their futures just beginning. Near the stage, a woman in an older flight suit stood still, her posture straight, but her presence mostly ignored. Charles Whitmore stepped up to the podium, a smirk playing on his face as he adjusted his tie and tapped the mic. His eyes swept the crowd before landing on the woman. With theatrical sarcasm, he raised a hand toward her and spoke loudly enough for the cameras to catch every word. Perhaps Miss Harper would like to share her thoughts on modern leadership, since she claims to have so much experience. Laughter rippled through the crowd, tight and rehearsed. Some cadets glanced her way, curious, others with thinly veiled smirks. She didn't flinch, didn't smile, didn't step back. Instead, she lifted her hand slowly and touched the small device in her ear. Then it came. A low vibration at first, like thunder rolling across distant hills. People paused mid-sentence, looking up. The sound grew louder, a roar cutting through the clear sky, too close, too precise to be commercial. Charles squinted toward the horizon, his confident posture flickering for the first time. Heads turned, phones lifted. Somewhere above the mountains, a dark speck emerged, moving fast. It wasn't scheduled, wasn't rehearsed. No one had cleared this with the control tower. The woman didn't move. She just stood there, her eyes steady on the sky as the sound of jet engines drowned out the last of the laughter. Emily Harper lived in a cabin tucked between pine trees in silence just outside a forgotten Nevada town. Her mornings began before sunrise with coffee black as the desert night and a cloth in her hand polishing a small silver badge. The Falcon Division crest still caught the light, though the edges were dulled and one corner was slightly bent. The photo beside it showed a man in an old flight suit squinting into the sun beside an F-16. Her father, taken weeks before his plane went down in Kosovo, his handwriting faded on the back. She'd carried that photo through 2 wars and 3 assignments, each crease and tear, a reminder that some things are meant to be held on to, no matter how worn. Emily didn't speak much about her past. Neighbors only knew she had once flown jets and that she didn't go into town unless she needed fuel or flour. When asked what she did now, she'd smile politely and say she was learning how to stay still. Her face, tanned and lined in quiet ways, didn't match the stories some had heard, about a woman who flew straight into enemy territory and made it back against every odd. She had grown up on Air Force bases, always packing and unpacking, learning the rhythm of loss early. Her mother worked 3 jobs after her father died, cleaning barracks, stocking store shelves, and filling out financial aid forms by lamplight. Homework came first, always. That discipline wasn't a punishment. It was a promise her mother made with every late shift she worked. Emily graduated near the top of her class at the Air Force Academy, though not without friction. Some instructors looked through her. Others looked down on her. A few believed she could fly, but most believed she couldn't handle the math or the G-forces or the judgment. She never gave them the satisfaction of an argument. She just flew. By 24, she was climbing into the cockpit of an F-22, her call sign stitched in sharp white across her flight suit. Her commander once said she had a kind of spatial instinct that couldn't be taught, as if she didn't see in 3 dimensions but 4. On missions, she was always one step ahead of the threat. She never explained how. She just knew. The mission that changed everything came during a dusty afternoon in Syria. A Black Hawk had gone down behind enemy lines, 11 Marines trapped with insurgents closing in. Helicopters couldn't reach them, and command ruled out fixed-wing support. Too risky. Emily studied the terrain for hours and found a canyon route that might keep her off radar long enough to strike. She requested clearance. It was denied. She went anyway. The jet shook like it might come apart, tearing through the air so fast her vision blurred. She broke the sound barrier and emerged into the open just long enough to lay down cover fire. The rescue team got in. The Marines got out. Every one of them made it home. Emily did not. A missile she didn't see coming hit her on exit. Shrapnel punched through her canopy and into her helmet. She flew almost blind for 40 minutes, bleeding, one eye, useless systems failing. When she landed, the plane was barely intact. The airfield fell silent. The injuries healed. Mostly. She lost partial vision in her right eye, but could still read gauges and trim controls. The bigger wounds came after. Her squadron closed ranks. The official report blamed her for disobeying orders, for risking an aircraft, for compromising intel. The Marines weren't allowed to testify. The footage disappeared. She could have fought it. She didn't. Her father used to say that honor wasn't what others gave you. It was what you kept when no one else was looking. So she took the honorable discharge and walked away, even though it felt more like exile. Back in her cabin years later, the noise of war had faded, but not the silence that followed it. She didn't miss the politics or the briefings or the medals, but sometimes when the wind picked up just right, she swore she could still feel the weight of that helmet on her head, still hear the low whine of an engine finding balance in the sky. Emily never stopped flying. Not really. Some things don't leave you just because you leave them. Whitmore Aviation Academy stood like a glass monument at the edge of the Nevada plains, its hangars lined with the latest aircraft and its dorms wrapped in brushed steel and silent elevators. It felt more like a tech company than a school. Inside, everything gleamed. Hallways, so polished you could see your reflection, instructors who spoke with corporate precision, and cadets who looked like they were auditioning for magazine covers. The academy promised to build the next generation of aviation leaders. Its brochures featured young pilots smiling under the glow of high-tech simulators and drone formations. Beneath the surface, though, it operated like an exclusive club, one built on legacy appearance and subtle exclusion. Charles Whitmore ran it all with a smile that never reached his eyes. Tall and clean-cut, he wore tailored suits that matched the polished marble in the lobby. His family's defense empire funded the academy, and his name was etched on its buildings, but he preferred to be called director, not benefactor. He recognized Emily Harper the moment she registered for the civilian retraining program. Her name didn't appear in any promotional emails or photo ops. He made sure of that. Years earlier, she had cost his company a government contract by testifying about faulty guidance systems. It had made headlines, and he had never forgotten. Emily didn't come to cause trouble. She just wanted to get close to the sky again, to fly without the weight of rank or war. The retraining program accepted veterans from all branches, though it quietly favored the young and photogenic. She arrived with one duffel bag and no entourage, wearing a simple flight jacket and well-worn boots. From the moment she stepped onto the campus, she felt the difference. The cadets barely looked at her, and when they did, it was with confusion. She was too old, too quiet, too plain for the aesthetic they had built. The instructors handed out assignments in sleek briefing rooms, screens glowing with real-time metrics. Emily listened, took notes, and asked precise questions. She didn't speak often, and when she did, her voice was low and clipped, like someone trained to waste no words. Her first week was spent learning new systems, mostly software upgrades and navigation redesigns. It was clear that most of the program wasn't built for people like her. The instructors moved fast, their slides designed for students who had grown up on touchscreens and VR headsets. In the cafeteria, Emily sat alone, not out of pride or discomfort, but because no one offered a seat. The tables were crowded with fresh uniforms and confident chatter talk of drone shows and social media reach. Her presence didn't fit the rhythm of the place. Charles watched it all from a distance, rarely interacting directly, but his influence was everywhere. Assignments were shuffled. Simulation schedules were changed. When Emily asked about it, the staff smiled politely and told her it was all random. Still, she stayed. She completed every task, arrived early to maintenance checks, and logged extra hours on outdated equipment, not because she was trying to prove anything, but because it was what she knew. Work was her language. She noticed the younger students looking at her with curiosity, sometimes pity, but rarely respect. They whispered in hallways and laughed behind their hands. To them, she was a relic, a name they didn't recognize, a woman who didn't post updates or wear the right gear. Emily didn't mind the silence. She was used to being underestimated. What caught her off guard was how carefully crafted the exclusion was, like a system designed not just to ignore her, but to erase her entirely. Still, she kept moving through it. Quiet, steady waiting. Emily's days began before sunrise, but not in the cockpit. Instead, she was assigned to hangar maintenance, scrubbing oil from concrete while other students prepped for flight drills. The air reeked of fuel and hot metal, and by mid-morning her knees ached from kneeling beside wheels she'd once flown over war zones. No one said the words out loud, but their eyes spoke it clearly. She didn't belong. The instructors called it a lesson in discipline, but Emily knew better. While others ran simulations in glass-walled control rooms, she polished tools and organized parts bins. Her call sign, once embroidered proudly on her flight suit, meant nothing here. The younger cadets passed her without a nod, too busy filming themselves for Academy vlogs or posting their perfect group photos. Sometimes they left their trash on the floor near her station. Just enough to be noticed, not enough to be disciplined. One even joked loud enough for her to hear, asking if janitorial duty came with veteran benefits. Emily didn't react. She kept her hands steady, her voice low. She finished the tasks assigned to her and moved to the next without pause. She wasn't here to argue. She was here to learn again how to fly. The sabotage came during her first simulation week. She entered the pod, settled her hands on the familiar controls, and ran her checks. The screen flickered once, then stabilized. No one mentioned the software override that would trigger mid-flight. At 30 minutes in, her controls went dark. No thrusters, no guidance, just dead air. Behind the glass, a few cadets snickered while others looked confused. The instructor pretended to jot down notes. Emily kept breathing. She ran through backup protocols in her head. Her body moved before her mind caught up. No panic, no hesitation. She coaxed the simulated aircraft through a glide path, making the kind of landing that would be impressive under normal circumstances and nearly impossible without control input. The room was quiet when she stepped out. One of the younger students clapped once, then looked away, embarrassed. The instructor marked her as average. No one spoke of the override. Back in her bunk that night, Emily lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Not because of what had happened. She had dealt with worse. What bothered her was how deliberate it all felt, how coordinated their quiet war had become. They weren't trying to challenge her. They were trying to erase her. She still showed up every day, boots laced, collar pressed. Her routines were tight, her notes detailed. She treated the academy like a mission brief, one where her job was to survive quietly without drawing fire. Each insult was a reminder of where she stood. Each missed opportunity was a line in the sand. She didn't flinch, and that seemed to bother them even more. She spoke only when necessary, avoided the cafeteria when she could, and kept her badge tucked deep in her bag. Not because she was ashamed, but because she wasn't ready for anyone to see it scratched. The small victories didn't show up on any scoreboard, but they kept her steady. A calibrated landing, a flawlessly disassembled engine, a systems report turned in before deadline. She didn't smile much, but her silence had weight, the kind of weight that unsettled people who expected collapse. And quietly, without fanfare, Emily Harper stayed on course. The evening event was held in the Academy's main atrium, all glass ceilings and polished marble lit with soft blue spotlights meant to feel elegant. Uniformed servers weaved between aerospace executives, government officials, and press crews looking for good angles. Emily wore black slacks and a crisp white shirt, the same as every other server, though she was the only one with calluses on her hands from engine grease. Charles stood near the stage, champagne flute in hand, greeting guests like a man who owned the air around him. His smile widened when the cameras turned his way. Then he lifted one arm toward the crowd, gesturing dramatically, just as Emily passed by with a tray of drinks. He announced how Whitmore believed in second chances, even for those whose best days, he said, were clearly behind them. His voice rose with each word carefully timed for the microphones in the room. People laughed. The kind of laughter that cuts more than it fills space. Emily kept walking. Her hand didn't shake. She set the tray on the edge of a table and stepped back, her expression blank. Near the front, a cadet she recognized from early training lowered her eyes. She didn't say anything, didn't move, just looked down and pressed her lips together like she was swallowing a stone. Charles continued riffing on legacy and leadership, tossing in another dig about how some people wear uniforms long after they've lost their edge. The laughter built again. Even some of the instructors smiled. Emily stood near the wall, just close enough to hear everything but far enough to be left alone. She didn't speak, didn't walk out. Her breath stayed, even her face unreadable. When the event ended, she cleaned quietly alongside the hired staff. No one offered to help. No one met her eyes. The atrium emptied quickly, the air left cold from air conditioning and silence. She returned to her dorm, late shoes, dusty hands sore. The hallway lights buzzed overhead. As she reached for her door, something caught her eye on the floor. It was her Falcon Division badge. It lay in a pile of dust near the trash chute, scuffed and bent, the metal scratched like someone had tried to carve through her name. She crouched, slowly lifting it from the ground. The edge of the engraving still showed her initials, and just barely the ones her father had etched beneath. He had told her that day when he gave it to her that it wasn't about heritage. It was about earning it. She held it in her palm, cold and heavier than it used to feel. The hallway around her was silent, but her mind wasn't. Every word from that stage echoed in the space between her ribs. Still, she didn't cry, didn't curse. She walked into her room, shut the door behind her, and sat on the edge of the narrow bed. Then she opened the drawer where she kept her things and laid the badge inside. Gently, carefully, like it still meant something, because to her, it always would. The night settled heavy and still, the kind of quiet that felt too wide to fill. Emily sat on the edge of her bed, her uniform shirt folded on the chair beside her, her hands wrapped around the Falcon badge like it was the last solid thing in her life. The scratches caught the light from the hallway as it slipped through the thin crack under her door. She ran her thumb along the edge where the initials had been carved long ago. Her grandfather had carried it through Korea. Her father took it to Desert Storm. She had earned it in her own right, not because of blood or name, but because she had shown up again and again when it mattered. She closed her eyes and let the memory come back clear and unshakable. She was 17, standing on the tarmac with her father, the air thick with fuel and desert heat. He held the badge in his palm like it was made of something more than metal. He told her that legacy meant nothing if you didn't live up to it. People will try to tear you down, not because they're right, but because it's easier than facing what you stand for. You can't make them respect you, but you can remind them why they should. She had held that close for years through long deployments and worse debriefs, but somewhere along the way the silence she chose to protect others had swallowed her whole. She hadn't just stepped back. She had disappeared. Now, holding the badge again, she felt the difference. This wasn't about medals or apologies. It wasn't about proving anyone wrong. It was about putting truth back where it belonged. She walked to the small desk near the window and turned on the lamp. Its yellow light warmed the pages of a dusty notebook where she kept old numbers, names she hadn't said out loud in years. The Marines she had saved, the pilot who owed her his life, the officer who had quietly believed her but had no authority to speak. She picked up her phone. The first number she dialed rang only once before the voice answered, older, but still sharp. He didn't ask why she called. He just asked what she needed. One by one she reached out to them. The test pilot in California, the defense engineer in Seattle, the JAG officer who now taught ethics at a small university in Colorado. Each voice brought back parts of herself she had pushed away. Each one said yes before she could even finish her sentence. When the last call ended, she sat back and stared out the window. The stars above the mountains were sharp and bright, untouched by the noise below. Her hands rested on her knees, steady now. She wasn't planning a speech. She wasn't going to argue or plead. She would let the truth speak. Let the record play. And let people decide for themselves. This wasn't about revenge. Revenge was loud and messy and temporary. This was something else. Something deeper. She wanted peace. Not just for herself, but for the girl she had been. For the woman she still believed she could be. In the morning, the sun would rise over the same polished walkways, the same indifferent faces. But something would be different. She had stopped running. She looked again at the badge resting in her open palm, the metal warm now from her touch. She wasn't here to be liked. She was here to finish something. And this time she would not leave quietly. The graduation field buzzed with energy, rows of folding chairs filled with proud families, uniformed cadets, and high-ranking military brass. Cameras rolled steadily from the media tent, and the Academy's banners waved crisp and perfect above the polished stage. Charles stood behind the podium, calm and sure, waiting just long enough for silence before he began. He spoke of innovation, of leaving behind outdated methods and embracing modern excellence. He smiled easily as he gestured to the cadets seated in front of him, praising their achievements and ambition. Then, with a pause that felt rehearsed, he turned toward the crowd and made a thinly veiled jab at relics who refused to evolve. Emily stood at the edge of the grounds, her posture steady in a plain suit, her expression unreadable. She didn't flinch when the crowd glanced her way, didn't move when a few whispered to each other. Her hand rose briefly to her ear. The sky answered. A low hum built in the distance, faint at first, then rising to a sharp crescendo that drowned the rustle of flags and the shifting of feet. A dark jet shot into view, streaking just above the treetops. Gasps rippled across the field. The aircraft climbed too fast, then rolled into a spiral that seemed to defy every rule of aerodynamics. It looped into a knife-edge pass, cutting the air so close the sound cracked like thunder. Phones went up in every direction. The crowd forgot to blink. Then the sky changed. Light flared around the jet as holograms shimmered into view, wide and glowing like ghosts born from the clouds. Amelia Earhart's face took shape eyes forward, proud and calm. Beside her, Bessie Coleman and Jackie Cochran followed, each one holding steady above the field, like protectors from another time. Gasps turned into stunned silence. The aircraft slowed into a slow pass, wings tipped toward the assembly. The holograms held firm, circling above like constellations unshaken by gravity or doubt. The cadets stared motionless. A few mouths hung open. The display wasn't about speed, it was about control, precision, legacy. Charles looked up, his speech forgotten. The microphone picked up only the wind. Emily didn't move. Her eyes stayed on the jet as it dipped one final time over the field, a smooth arc that sliced through the sky with effortless grace. When the noise faded, nothing replaced it. No applause, no words. Only a long, breathless pause and the feeling that something had just shifted in a way no one could undo. The jet passed one final time slower, now trailing only silence. From its underside, a small wooden box dropped cleanly, guided by a narrow parachute that collapsed the moment it touched the ground. It landed at the foot of the stage right in front of Charles, who took a half step back, as if the air had shifted. A staff member bent to retrieve it, holding it up like it was fragile. Inside, nestled in dark velvet, lay a medal gleaming beneath the sun. It was the Distinguished Flying Cross, its ribbon still stiff, its surface etched with a name half the audience had never heard until today. Next to it was a photograph worn at the corners of 11 Marines in hospital blues crowded around a bed. The back carried their handwritten thanks, faded from time, but still clear enough to read. Last, there was a small USB drive. A technician plugged it into the outdoor projector without instruction. The screen behind the stage blinked, then lit up with raw footage stamped with old military time codes. The scene opened on a desert canyon, the view shaking from speed, the angle narrow and impossible. The jet screamed through tight walls of rock, weaving through turns that would have cracked most pilots. Then came the flash of anti-aircraft fire, a direct hit that cracked the canopy. The footage blurred briefly with blood and shrapnel, then steadied as hands moved, adjusting dials, shifting levers, keeping the machine alive. The video cut to the landing. Broken gear atilt, sparks against the tarmac. Then finally the cockpit opened, and the pilot climbed out with blood across one eye, one hand still gripping the edge of the frame. She didn't stumble. The screen faded to black. No one spoke. Charles looked like the ground had tilted under him. His mouth opened, then closed again. The cadets were frozen, caught between disbelief and something older. Something like respect. From the back row, a single clap echoed across the field. It came from the young female cadet who had looked away weeks earlier. Her hands moved slowly but with certainty. One by one, others joined her. The sound spread like rising wind. Emily didn't step forward. She just stood watching as truth took the place of silence. Emily walked along the edge of the field, her step steady, her face unreadable. The crowd shifted as she passed, unsure whether to speak or step aside. She wasn't wearing her old uniform anymore, just a soft gray jacket and worn jeans, the kind of clothes that let her disappear when she needed to. People called after her, but she didn't stop. A few reporters raised microphones. Someone asked how she arranged the jet. Another wanted to know if she was returning to active duty. She gave no answers, only a nod that could have meant anything or nothing at all. Near the stage, the young cadet stood frozen, her eyes glassy with the weight of what she'd seen. Emily paused in front of her, reaching into the inside pocket of her jacket. She pulled out the Falcon Division badge, its edges still scratched, still bearing 3 generations of initials. She placed it gently into the cadet's palm. When you fly, don't let them tell you who belongs in that cockpit. You'll know when it's right. Trust that more than their noise. The cadet nodded, both hands closing around the badge like it might disappear if she didn't hold tight enough. Emily offered a faint smile, small but real, then turned and kept walking. She left the parade ground without another word, without looking back. Her old pickup truck waited near the outer lot, its paint dulled by sun, but its engine still sure. She climbed in, rolled down the window, and pulled out slowly onto the gravel road. Behind her, the academy shrank into the rearview mirror. The banners, the stage, the silence. It all faded. Ahead, the mountains rose in quiet lines, tall and steady. She drove toward them past the tree line and the old trail that led to her father's memorial. She would stop there first, scatter the last of her anger in the same wind he used to chase, then keep moving. Next week, she would start her new job training search and rescue pilots, teaching them how to fly when everything fails, how to trust instinct, how to stay alive when maps mean nothing. It wasn't glory, but it was flying. It was saving lives. And it was enough.